Okey dokey. Official gavel. Welcome to the meeting of the Ferndale Board of Zoning Appeals. Today is November 21st. The meeting will come to order at 7:01. I'm going to read something to you that's very important, and you have to understand that we're doing this to just prepare everybody for everything. The Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body authorized by Section 24-421 of the City of Ferndale's Code of Ordinances. The BZA is not a body that empowers. We are restricted by the city zoning ordinances and by Michigan law. BZA is authorized to interpret the zoning ordinance and zoning maps, hear and decide appeals made by administrative officials or bodies charged with enforcing the ordinance, and analyze variance requests as permitted under the ordinance. The BZA does not have the power or the authority to amend the zoning ordinance or disregard its provisions or to rezone parcels of land. We do have indications that any board members will be absent other than Ian. We didn't get anything from Nick.
No, we did not.
Will anybody like to make a motion for the excused or unexcused?
I move to excuse Nick and, is there another?
Ian.
Ian, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Um,
And
Anybody have any proposals or changes to the agenda?
through the chair, we do have to do roll call.
Oh, we do?
Yes.
And absentees? Okay, go ahead.
Board Member Fiore? Here. Board Member Azar?
Here.
Board Member Palmer?
Here.
Board Member Plazinski?
Here.
Board Member Webb?
Here.
And Council Member Mikulski?
Here.
Should I continue reading or should I do the agenda?
Yes.
That was an either-or question, which would you like me
Sorry,
to do?
the agenda. I think what's
The
next?
agenda? Okay. I just want to make sure that all right, just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that we can't change things. We do have an introduction of a new board member. So, Nick,
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
thanks for being here. Need an approval of approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any changes or additions to the agenda, oh my God, agenda?
I move to approve the agenda published for tonight's meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was in August. Everybody get a chance to read it? That was a pretty lengthy meeting, guys. Anybody have anything that they want to change or bring to the attention of the city or anything?
No, I move to approve the minutes from August 15th Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we have a call to the audience at this time, and the call to the audience is basically a public hearing. An open public hearing, but the call to the audience allows people from the audience to come forward and address anything. It has to be things that are not on the agenda, though. Open and close, same time. The regular agenda. We are to consider 3 dimensional variances at 1692 Jarvis. Way that we normally have that, we have the city explain their side of it or their explanation, and then we will allow the applicant to.
Good evening, Board of Zoning Appeals. So we are here tonight for the three-dimensional variances at 1692 Jarvis. So on your screen, I have a aerial of the subject property. This is on the south side of Jarvis, between Wanda and West End. So it's the southeast quadrant of the city. We were approached over the summer about installing a carport on this property. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit more. So we do have the subject house here outlined in red. The house is a little bit on the east side of the property. There's a driveway you can't really see that runs along the eastern boundary. And there's a typical Ferndale detached garage here in the back. So, you know, residents come and ask us where they can put new accessory structures such as garages or carports, and we explain them to the language of the ordinance, the distances from other accessory structures, the distance from the primary structure, and any distances from any lot lines. So we do have our building official, Scott Worthington, here, so he did explain these requirements to the applicant. The carport was constructed anyway, roughly in the area between the house and the garage. So the applicant did notify us of this and look for a way to remedy the situation. And I believe the BZA was discussed as a potential to seek a variances for these distances. So we do have three variances in question here. The carport to the house, the carport to the garage, and the carport to the property line. So here's a survey of the site. We have the whole survey on the left. North is up. Jarvis is here along the top. And then the box I've kind of blown up. So this crosshatch section here is the house. This smaller crosshatch box down here is the garage. And this rectangle right here is the carport. So the carport is anchored with two footings on the east side, and then it hangs over. I'll skip ahead to existing conditions. So this is a view from the right of way. You can see the house, you can see the detached garage in the back, and you can see the carport with at least one of the footings here is kind of hanging out in between the house and the garage. Another issue that I noted in the staff report is, once it was decided to go through this process, they do have to get a survey. That's a requirement for all BZA items. So it was at this point it was discovered that one of the footings of the carport was actually on the neighbor's property by a little over half a foot. I think this isn't, this is why we need surveys for things like this. But I mean, if you look at the existing conditions, you can see, I don't know if you would know that the property line is actually within the driveway by a little bit. I don't think you could eyeball it, but ultimately that's why we have a survey to show the accurate locations of the property lines. So part of the carport was constructed on the neighboring property. I did discuss this with our city attorney. He recommended that the two, the neighbor and the applicant can discuss this and produce some kind of, easement or license agreement or something. So he recommended that the neighbor, if they wanted to, produce a letter stating they would work towards that if variances tonight were granted. So the applicant was able to receive that letter, and that was included in the packet. I think that's really all I have at the moment. So we just have, again, the three variances. Two accessory structures have to be at least 25 feet from one another, and these are much closer than that. The carport or any accessory structure has to be at least 10 feet from the primary structure. This is closer. And then any fire-rated structure has to be at least 3 feet from the property line. So Scott did confirm this is a fire-rated structure. So that's those are the three variances that we have for you tonight. I know this is a little bit unique as it's already been built. But that's, I guess, all I can really say about that. At this time, I'd like to bring up the applicant. This is Chris Vandemer, so he can explain his situation.
Hi, I'm Chris Vandemer. I live at 1692 Jarvis. I've lived in Ferndale for 18 years. I've done a lot of things for the community, and I'm not going to go into that because it's not really pertinent to this. But I just want to explain to you all why I kind of brought this hailstorm on myself by saying, hey, my pickup truck, it was my father's truck, and I have a lot of cars, and I really like my cars, and they're all nice cars. They were stored at other locations. Well, my pickup truck caught fire as I was doing a little cleanup job for someone. The back of the truck caught fire, and I would store it in a garage, and I lost my garage storage. And once I lost my garage storage with a fire and a higher, I insured my truck for $9,000, and it's a 2002 Dakota. It's just a normal, really pretty red truck that my dad gave me when he died. When that burned, I was really crushed emotionally. So once I found out there was going to be an insurance investigator, basically a formal hearing coming to my house, and with Haggerty Insurance requiring a authorized shelter of some sort for your collector vehicle to meet their guidelines, I freaked out. I'm like, this guy's coming to my house to give me, make sure you didn't do this for insurance fraud or nothing, which I totally understood. So I did what I had to do. I was very honest with the city. I was forthcoming and said, hey, I got to do what I got to do. And I'm prepared to pay. I paid for my survey. I paid for my application fee. Talked to Roger, gave no one zero attitudes. Bought the best thing. Had a quality contractor. My contractor's here if anyone wants to ask technical questions. I don't think that's going to happen. But I've had vehicles hit in front of my house because at Jarvis you can only park on one side of the street. It's not fun. Also too, I know Ferndale's trying to change zoning. My house was built in 1920. There's not a lot of space. Sure, I have another lot, but I also want to let you know that I have 9 vision issues, and if we were going to move the carport, it would create a practical difficulty on me because of my vision issues. This thing is filtered light. It's very good for me to work under there safely. I can work day or night in this thing. It doesn't blind me. Scott and Christine, I demonstrated when I took my sunglasses off what the sun does to me. I'm not lying, and you guys have my medical records. So I appreciate everyone coming out. I'm just trying to stay humble and honest here. Yeah, I did wrong, and I brought it on myself. But I ask that we please, let's go for the practical difficulty and my hardship. I admit it's close to the house, but there's really nowhere else I could put it without putting $7,000 and endangering my health. So I want to be honest with everyone. It is clearly stated on the survey that carport is built in the shadiest part of the property. So please consider that. There's other things we could talk about, but I value everyone's time and I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Okay, so at this time, what we're going to do is ask anyone on the board if they have any questions to the applicant
Oh, sure.
or to Kyle.
Through the chair, we do need to hold a public hearing.
Thank you. Okay. Now we'll conduct a public hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak for or against this applicant? You'll have to come to the podium, sir. State your name, please.
Michael Ouellette from Christian Brothers Construction. So just to clarify, Chris did hire us to construct this carport, and it was a new type of thing. It was very unique. It was purchased special order from Home Depot, and it was the smallest version they had. And the construction of it was actually done beyond what the specifications were. So it asked for, as far as the holes for the footings to go, where I believe each one was a yard and a half of concrete, and we ended up putting almost 3 yards. So it's built like a little beyond specifications, just for what that's worth. And I just wanted to say that. But it is a very tight, I mean, it was the smallest one you could buy, and his yard is very small. I mean, you can barely get a car back there, so it's kind of in a bad situation, so that's all.
Any questions to the building department or to the applicant? Board?
Question for the applicant
Yes, please ask.
or for your contractor? I guess.
Either one of us would be happy to talk.
I was just curious. I'm not super familiar with how common carports are in Ferndale, but when I think about a carport, I envision it like kind of attached to the house, and I was just wondering.
Yes, that would have not been up to fire code. Michael had talked to me about that. He said, Chris, if we would have built you one, it would never have passed with Scott's requests. And this is boutique. This is fireproof. This whole project is in close to $8,000 for this carport. It is not a flim-flam device. I mean, I don't know how many, I know several of you have come and seen it, but I mean, we are talking quality here. It was, cheaper than a garage, sure. I couldn't afford a new garage. I couldn't afford more concrete, and I can't fit. I have a 62 Thunderbird. I have a 74 Chevy. They're not going to be able to pull through my existing garage into my backyard between my central air and my garage. There's no way I can barely fit my Dakota there. I had to cut corners off my concrete to not rub the wheel against the concrete. So it's a very tight fit. Not to beat things up, but if it were to be relocated, it couldn't even fit there because the way the 1920 house is built, just with the limited space, when you have a central air conditioning here, the garage here, you're not putting, the Fiesta and the Avenger can clear just fine. The Dodge Dakota can barely clear. The El Camino, the Thunderbird, they'll never clear. They would never be able to be put like over and into another area for relocation. But yeah, the thing is top-notch quality. I mean, Scott's seen the receipts for it. It's very good. And no, I believe this sets precedents for carports in Ferndale. Hopefully, with more people getting EV vehicles, they're EV capable. You can put it on there and have it wired in. I don't own an EV. I really can't afford one. But it's just another option for the environmental pleasantries of owning carports versus, like, say you get a nice condominium, you don't have a car port, you could have these, and they could have charging stations or vacuums for people to use to keep their cars clean and such. Just ideas, thank you.
Okay, I guess for the city then, I'm just curious, if the carport were attached to the structure, would they need the variances? I'm just trying to figure out, do we allow it if it was attached to the structure? Or, like what is allowable for a carport to not need a variance in Ferndale? Just trying to get a frame of reference.
I mean, just based on like the width of the carport, I don't think we could put it on, between the house and the property line here, and it might not fit here. I mean, essentially, if you're keeping the 3 feet off the property line and 10 feet from the house, you can put it wherever you can fit it, essentially. So attaching it to the house, I mean, I don't know if there's any spot along the east side of it that would fit. I think one location that, theoretically could fit, I don't know if it would work exactly for Mr. Vandemer's situation, but if it were attached to the west side of the garage, I don't think that would require any kind of variance.
Okay, so
But I
it's
don't know if
more a
this,
matter
I don't know if
of the
this is even
size.
attachable to the garage. I don't know if it needs the footings.
Okay, and the property, the size of the driveway versus the space.
Yeah. And it's like you said, you know, it is a tight foot. It's only 15 feet between the garage and the house.
Okay,
So maneuvering it back there to the west side of the garage, if the carport was over there, I don't know if that's feasible for him.
and if it was attached to the house, they would still need a variance for then the distance for the house to the garage because.
When you say attached to the house, you mean like in this area or up in this little cutout right here?
Yeah, I guess if it's not feasible, it's not feasible. I didn't think of a specific
Yeah.
part. I was just reading the ordinance, how it talks about, like, it can be, you can have a carport that's not an accessory structure if it's attached to the house, but that doesn't really fit.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
Anything
it's
about this
attached
situation.
to the house, it has to be 5 feet off the property line.
Got it.
Accessory
So it
structures
wouldn't
are
make
allowed.
that, it wouldn't really, it would still need like 2 variances.
Yeah. If it was attached to the house, I mean, that negates the variance, one of the variances tonight, which is the
Yeah.
distance from the
But it
carport
would
to the
still
house.
need like,
Yeah, there's other things. I mean, the way our ordinance works is if you can place it without violating anything, then you're good to go. You still need a building permit, of course, but for us to review all that. So I do think there are options. I don't know if they necessarily work well with his specific situation.
okay. That's helpful.
Question for the applicant, if you don't mind. Sure. So, did you come to the city before you installed it to seek a permit?
Yes, I did. I brought it on myself. I mean, and I'm not saying I brought anything. I did try. I did try to say something because I've known Ferndale. I mean, I've gone to enough city council meetings to know. I tried, but I was just under pressure with the insurance situation, with, you know, my dad having passed recently. I was kind of freaking out. So I'm just being honest.
So with any variance request, the goal is always to have as least amount of variance as possible, preferably none, of course. I do believe that with 3 variances here, that's a lot of deviation, especially since it was installed without the benefit of a permit.
BZAs are tough. I respect what you're saying.
Now, what is your difficulty with installing the carport on the west side of the garage or even structurally attached?
Too much direct sunlight with my medical condition. It would be blinding to me, honestly, and I would not be able to fit all my vehicles back there. That's honesty. You could take that for what it's worth mechanically, but
And plus too, that's grass.
And my other question would be is, why can you not use your work on the vehicles, store the vehicles?
because I have a lot of vehicles, sir, I have to keep it's insurance regulations. My convertible for Grundy Worldwide must be in a locked garage. Haggerty will allow outside storage, but it must be in a sheltered. It's technicalities, which unfortunately brought a lot more technicalities and a lot more price on me and our time, which is very valuable. Thank you for everyone coming.
One last question, if you don't
Yes.
mind. Did you survey your property before having those footings installed, before having the carport installed?
No, I did not, but once the city requested it, I got it immediately. I mean, it was very hard to find a survey too, and unfortunately, the place in Troy, the company that guaranteed, the owner passed away, so they went out of business. So I had talked, Councilman Polika introduced me to Roger, introduced me to Board Member Mikulski, and, you know, Roger told me, he goes, BZAs are tough. Scott made it crystal clear to me, we don't want people building 100 things, but I just hope when someone sees quality that's never been featured in any part of Ferndale, maybe we could have a heart. And this person was honest. He screwed up. He's prepared to pay more taxes or whatever. I understand there was some squares thing talked about by Scott. You know, I want to work with you guys. I'm sorry we had to come to this to waste all your time, which it isn't a waste of time, but I mean, it's $8,000 on me to fight for my hobbies, basically, and to, you know, cover up the dad's truck. I mean, I'm just driving it now. Once my other car gets done, it stays under the shed. So the shed is watertight. It's cool in the summer, it's great. So, thank you, everyone.
A question for either Mr. Bryce or Mr. Worthington. Let's say theoretically this were to be approved, the attorney okayed a easement for the footing property. What then happens in the future when the neighboring property line? Will that cause an issue with there?
Yes, I mean, I do think that would cause an agreement, and that's why, as we go through this, I think we would need more of the city attorney's support in this matter in crafting an agreement that's going to address issues in the future. So that's all Dan Chris, that's our attorney, had to say on the matter. He recommended this letter just to get us to this point. And then, if we do get the variances and proceed, we can work with him to craft a document that's going to work.
Through the chair, I'm not sure, I don't remember if we've been told what exactly prompted coming
Okay.
at this point.
What brought about erecting the carport, is that what you're unsure of?
No, I'm just curious, so I understand it's already up because it had to get up fast because
Yes.
there was an insurance
Inspector
situation.
coming.
Okay, so then it was up. Is it just honesty that then brought you after the fact to come talk to the city?
No,
or-
before the event, I brought it to the city's attention, and I just said, look, I gotta do what I gotta do here.
So you were having the conversations before and then you continued?
Yeah, I brought this on
After
myself.
you
And
went.
people have said, why did you say anything? And
I
even,
see, I
I'm
see,
just, honesty painted me into a corner, so I'm
curious.
sure. No, and I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah, so I believe the carport, once it was erected, was made known to us. And at that point, we talked about what options we had. We've not actually started the ticketing process as of yet. But, when we were having that discussion, we talked about what possible options we have. I mean, clearly the number one option that we recommended was to remove the carport. But outside of that, I mean, really the only other recourse at the moment was to go through the BZA. So we have put a hold on the ticketing until, after whatever decision is made for tonight.
Any other questions? Go ahead, yeah.
Applicant again. Just want to clarify the chain of events there, if you don't mind.
Please.
So you had an incident that caused the insurance inspector, what have you?
Yeah, my truck caught fire. Anytime there's a fire of a vehicle, a fire of a house, the insurance company pays a third-party investigator, which I have the person's card here. I don't know if you need to see it or not, but it's this person, and he was a former detective for Wayne County Sheriff's. He interviewed me for 3.5 hours. He goes, I gotta grill you. He goes, I gotta do, and he has to see everything. And he wanted to see the chemical that caught fire on the truck. He wanted to see work done to the truck. And he said, yeah. And I just had that truck out of the body shop before it burned. He goes, you didn't burn your vehicle, I know that. But he goes, you're serious about this, and so on and so forth. But you have to have these things in line, especially with collector car policies. And my policy on that vehicle is very unique because it's a oddball. They'll only insure certain pickup trucks, and they have to be to certain standards for them to insure them for, $8,000 to $12,000, like mine's insured for $12,000 after I put $8,000 in it.
So the incident happened, inspector came out to interview, then you installed the carport after that? Or
No, the carport was installed ahead of time because the insurance you have to have proof of a shelter to meet their guidelines for Haggerty insurance. So that's why I had to do this. That's why I brought this on me.
The carport was installed purely for the insurance then?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Chris, do you keep that pickup truck at the house?
Always, yes.
Okay, I drove by today, I didn't see it.
I had to take it to work because I don't want to take my Mustang convertible to work. I don't want to take my 74 Chevy to work. My Ford Fiesta ST is in storage at a different house because it's a manual transmission, and I'm gout prone in the winter. I'm gout prone right now. I had to drive my pickup truck. My Dodge Avenger that I drive in the winter is a Ease Collision East Point. Chuck E's a resident of Ferndale. He's working on it right now.
Through the chair, I have a question for the applicant.
Please.
You have another spot where you're storing your other vehicles?
I rent the spots. They're very difficult to find. I get them for $40 a month. That's impossible. We're talking $200 to $300 to store a vehicle. I store at Senior Citizens in Chesterfield under their modular home carport, and I've stored in St. Clair Shores in a 6-car garage with my Dakota used to be there too. Once it burned, it was in the shop for 6 months. They go, we can't tie up your spot. We want to get someone else in there. I want my DeLorean in there.
Got it.
I should have made that clear. I'm sorry I didn't say that.
I have another question. Is it possible to move the carport that you just built?
It is very difficult, Mr. Olet.
Is it possible?
Michael can share what it would take to do that. We're 5 feet into concrete.
Got it.
As Mike said, they went above and beyond to put it in, and he can further alliterate. That's not my area of expertise. I just paid a lot of money to have it put up.
For sure.
Okay, thank you.
Well, our job is to make sure that we're following the rules, but also not setting a precedent so that other people in the future will think that it's okay to build whatever they want, whenever they want, however
And the
they want.
BZA has got to be firm. Roger made that crystal clear. Thank you for alliterating that. I knew this is not going to be easy, but moving it, once again, with my vision, is a hardship and a health concern for myself per the paperwork that everyone has, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
No problem.
I'd like to make a statement. The codes have always been there, and the basic codes, the variances that you're requesting are quite large. We've had one incident where they had a child of special needs that we had to allow to move a fence towards the front of the house, which is not allowed, but because of the child's special needs, it came through that we were able to do it. Like you said, you actually brought this on yourself. And my concern is that if Scott told you no, and you went and did it anyway, now you're up against 3 very large variances and an encroachment right now, having your post on your neighbor's property. So that's a 4th one. I mean, there's 3 variances and then a problem. I'm just wondering, beyond your site problem, and I drove by today and I thought to myself, well, if he's under there, and I know most of the time you open the hood or you're under the car, the light from the west side is quite intense. I don't know how it's going to protect you. I would think that the carport would have been installed the other way to protect your eyesight, because that just makes sense to me. I just go off of logic.
No problem. May I alliterate, please? Giant pine tree on the Young's property is 350 feet tall, and that provides the shade, which is why it went there, just to answer your question. And not to contradict, not to be disrespectful to anyone on the board at the Gaius, but I'm talking 6 inches on my carport, and the Youngs, when I had my concrete done, the Youngs were okay with concrete. I talked to them ahead of time. I go, some of my concrete might go on your property. They go, we're okay with that. They go, just so you're aware, something gets sold, you got to deal with it then. I go, I understand that. The Youngs signed paperwork stating that as long as we don't turn it into a hailstorm, they were okay with everything because everything's along the fence line. They go, as long as you don't exceed your fence line, which is what they gave permission to the McBrayers years ago. they were okay with that as well. So they have signed off, Mr. Young signed off on that. So I appreciate everyone asking. I don't want to get into technicalities. I don't want to seem hostile. So I'm going to stop right now. Thank you.
Can I continue now? Our codes are there because there were things that have happened in the past that made it not a good thing for our city. So for an individual to want to do something just because they want to do it is one thing, probably not allowed. And if it was something that was more of a hardship, your eyesight, I get that. Honestly, I do. But your collection of cars is a choice. Your choice to work on your car at your house is a choice. Your building a structure prior to getting the proper permits and getting it installed where the city might have allowed you to was your choice also. I'm uncomfortable, this is just me, I'm uncomfortable with you coming to us asking for 3 variances and one of them of being 21 feet. That's a lot of variance. It's allowed to be 3.5 feet. That's it. So, I guess that I'm just saying to you, Chris, if you, one of those woulda, coulda, shoulda. And I feel bad, but there's nothing about this that makes me want to change our code for you that would, again, as our other board member said, set precedents for somebody else to do it. We can't do that. That'll bring us into a very awkward position. That's something that I've been on the board for 24 plus years, and we never set a precedence because we can't. So I don't know what everybody else is gonna vote on or how we're gonna propose this or take this forward, but I'm very uncomfortable with the idea that you built it first and then started asking for large variances that honestly I've never seen before in the years that I've been on the board.
Yeah, I respect your opinion. I'm not going to argue with you. Said everything I could say, and I've been pulpit said foolish things.
No, we appreciate your honesty and we.
BZAs are firm and hard.
No, it's not that. It's what was done was not done the way it should have been done. And it's not like I can, we can't take it back. It's there. But it's actually a structure because it's there and it's not supposed to be, may be required to be taken down. And I'm sorry that may be the fact. I just know that there probably was another way to do it. We cannot even consider the idea of what you spent on it. That's not part of our job.
And that thing.
And your wants to work on cars or collect cars and what your insurance has and everything else. That's not a part of what we can go forward with to approve a variance. So I'm just letting you know how I feel about it. I wish it was different.
I appreciate your opinion. Thank you very much. And thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, I guess we're going to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion amongst ourselves? Then, if there's no discussion, I think that we need to, somebody should make a motion.
Through the chair, just for like procedural review. So we do have the 3 variances in question in the packet and the staff report. We do have draft approval and denial motions for each of those 3. Additionally, I mean, typically what we do is before the motions are made, we give the applicant who's had time to observe and listen to everyone at the dais to confirm that they want to go forward. Sometimes applicants choose to table prior to making motions. So I just wanted to remind everybody of that. So you can choose to table or you can.
Choose the table.
You would? Okay.
The tax table is correct.
No. I'm talking about tabling as in,
Putting it
not
off.
moving forward with the motion and canceling your request. So you can either cancel and not get a decision, or we can proceed on and they'll vote yes or no for each of the variances.
I'd like to proceed on, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was confused there.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying.
All right.
And am I correct too, Kyle, that we're voting on each variance, and if we deny one variance, the other two don't necessarily have to be voted on? It's all three.
We were talking about this. We would have to vote on all three.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
no problem. There were also a couple letters, I should state. There was a letter from the neighbor in support, and then there was two other letters from some neighbors with support for him to have the carport. There's also a letter of vision impairment from his eye doctor. There's also, of course, the carport information and the survey.
Can I guess, ask city staff to, I guess procedurally, are you able to advise us? Like, I always struggle, of course, we're considering the practical difficulty of the situation. But then anytime somebody, brings a disability into the mix and starts to sound like they're asking for a reasonable accommodation, I always struggle with kind of our role in being the arbiter of that. So I was just wondering if the city wanted to give, does the city have an opinion? If that's something we're supposed to be considering in this, or was that considered by the city? How does the city respond to that portion of the, I guess, justification?
I mean, I do think that is probably something that can be considered. I guess I don't know, the answer to the question. I don't know exactly what Ian would say, for instance, or if any disabilities have been brought up to this board before. I don't think anything has since I've been working here.
Had the one that Judy was alluding to,
Sure.
and it was about a fence and it was a child with a disability and some safety needs around having the fence being higher so the child couldn't breach it. So, and you weren't there, you're correct. So
Sure.
ultimately, we approved that variance, but at the time I was expressing sort of my confusion or stress around the fact that, I guess, if somebody wants to seek a reasonable accommodation to zoning ordinance, is the BZA the arbiter of that? And at the time, we were unclear. I think we're still unclear. And that part of it always, I guess, gives me pause.
Okay. So, I mean, it sounds like in that case, the disability in question was factored into the decision. I mean, is that a fair statement?
It was,
That's-
and it was, my opinion at the time, kind of like an err on the side of caution sort of situation. But I guess the bigger question I continue to have is if somebody wants to seek a reasonable accommodation for a, under the ADA to a component of the zoning ordinance, who is the correct authority within the city for that?
I think it would be the BZA ultimately. And keep in mind, applicants do have the ability to appeal decisions made by the BZA.
Right.
They do go to the court across the street, actually. So there is another step to this if it does proceed to that. But ultimately, I mean, we really haven't had too many, accessibility requests that would require a variance. So, I mean, this is my first time that's even, kind of related to that. So I do think it does fall to the BZA, and I think that is why we're here today. And then I guess wrapping up what I was speaking about a few minutes ago, because you did consider the disability in the previous approval that we've been citing, I think it could be considered for tonight.
Through the chair, not having been part of the BZA when that previous one was, I do see somewhat of a difference between controlling a property versus adding an amenity. So there could be other places to put shade that wouldn't, on the property, that wouldn't keep them from doing the same use. It just, so, yes, there's an effect of being more helpful visually, but it's, again, not, in my mind, not the only solution in its placement.
And through the chair, Christine did point out to me just now that the variance for the fence was, I think, 2 feet.
Yeah.
So,
Bringing it forward,
yeah.
because we're not allowed to have our fences in front of our houses. Only bringing it forward. Yeah. It was height, but it was also bringing it forward.
The height at the front portion, yeah, yeah. Thank you for the information.
Have several factors that can point us in that direction.
Well, I think, board member Azar.
Through the chair, just for discussion, maybe toward moving toward a motion. I found a lot of meaning in your, for lack of a better word, dialogue, like explaining the code and the situation and that. And just for discussion, I'd be in line with your thinking that it's harder to show that it's a need versus a want, and that there weren't other solutions available on this property to accommodate the same thing. Where I'm at on a motion. If anyone else wants to.
Any of you to make a motion? Sounds like we might need 3.
Through the chair, on variance number 1, I am moving to, that the Board of Zoning Appeals deny the dimensional variance application to allow a variance of 8.33 feet from the required 10-foot distance between a detached accessory structure and the principal structure at 1692 Jarvis, Sidwell number listed after a public hearing was held and set for this date in place. The motion is accompanied by the following findings, 1 through 6 listed.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Blazinski? Webb?
Sorry, does yes mean
Yes is voting
Aye.
for denial.
yes?
Councilmember Mikulski?
Yes.
Fiore?
Yes.
Azar?
Yes.
And Chair Palmer?
And through the chair, is it okay if I make a quick comment? I
so appreciate the discussion up here, and the fact that so much care is given to setting precedent and determining if this is a reasonable accommodation. The conversation about us being the arbiter of reasonable accommodations is very telling, because my first read of this, I do feel for you, Chris, immensely. My heart hurts for you. I am also somebody who has a classic car that I keep insured, and I work on very, very slowly over the course of too long of a period of time. But setting precedent for something that is a want rather than a dire need to keep you safe, I do think that this is probably one of these instances where accommodating these 3 variances, one of which is about 21 feet, it's excessive. And it does hurt you, and I am deeply, deeply sorry for you, but I do think that this yes vote, to me, was the right vote in this case.
On variance number 2, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals deny the dimensional variance application to allow variance of 21.5 feet from the required 25-foot distance between the detached accessory structures at 1692 Jarvis, Sidwell number listed here. After a public hearing was held as set for this date and place, the motion is accompanied by the following findings, listed number 1 through 6 in our packet.
Roll call, please.
Webb,
Yes.
Blazinski, Azar,
Yes.
Fiore, Councilmember Mikulski,
Yes.
and Chair Palmer.
All right, I will make a motion on variance number 3, that the Board of Zoning Appeals deny the dimensional variance application to allow a variance of 3 feet from the 3-foot distance between a fire-rated detached accessory structure and the property line at 1692 Jarvis, Sidwell number that's listed here. After a public hearing was held as set for this date in place, the motion is accompanied by the following findings listed in our packet number 1 through 6.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Blazinski, Webb,
Yes.
Councilmember Mikulski,
Yes.
Fiore,
Yes.
Azar,
Yes.
and Chair Palmer.
I would also reiterate Laura's feelings. I feel awful that we had to deny you. But it was a want instead of a need, and if it was done differently, it might have worked out differently for you.
We haven't ticketed you yet, so I can follow up with you tomorrow about next steps.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Through the chair, Judy. I think we're on to item number 6A.
We have to do the calendar, huh? Okay. So it's always been the third Tuesday of the month. To be honest with you, I wish it was after the planning commission. Because sometimes things at the planning commission. It's always been this way, so.
Yeah, that's true. I know different communities do it differently. I came from a community at my last job that, you always went to the planning commission first and then you went to the BZA after, but I think it's always been this way in Ferndale. So,
But I always thought it was kind of reversed. Anybody else agree?
Well, yeah, I don't know if you're talking about, like, when the meetings fall.
Yeah, because
In the
theirs is
month?
tomorrow. Right?
no, ours was,
Yeah.
We're the first
I don't
and the
think-
third.
Oh, first and the
So,
third,
for
so in
example, if they
between.
came to
right.
the first, I don't know if they would have time to appear on the third week meeting here.
sometimes they are back to back. It depends on the month.
Yeah, I think two separate issues to me. Obviously, there's when we meet in the month, and then just procedurally that the developments sometimes first, which you're referring to.
Yeah.
I agree with that part,
Yeah,
but
that's what I'm saying, because
I think-
sometimes the planning commission
Yeah.
person knows more than we know.
Sure.
And I was hoping that we
Sure,
could be
sure.
in the loop, that's all.
Oh, and I think the follow-up on that is the gap between the meetings. So if somebody were at the first meeting of the month, would they be able to get in the agenda for this meeting?
Right.
It's about a week and a half, right?
Um,
Not quite 2 weeks. So if something were in front of planning commission, would they have time to schedule for the same month to be seen here?
Have a short.
I'd have to look at the calendar, but in terms of the legal notice timing, I think that might be maybe why the system is as it is. Because in the case of, let's say they go to planning commission on the first Wednesday and then they want to go to BZA, typically we don't want to notice for something that's not set in stone. So I think that might be part of the issue here. But I don't recommend changing the system. I mean, if there is an interest in that, I can talk to,
Well, it's just a statement.
I can talk to the city
I don't
attorney.
think
I don't
it,
think I've ever said it before, but all of a sudden I
Yeah.
was thinking, because there are some times that the planning commission either knew about it before us and we weren't a part of it, I don't know, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't go to the website and read all the planning commission notes and all that stuff every time. But if something's coming before us that had been to the planning commission,
I see. Okay.
yeah, and I don't think it needs to be in the same month, but I believe we've had both, and I think it just comes down to when the meetings are happening, when the applications are coming. It's really only a matter of the, I guess, the larger commercial developments that have more, bells and whistles.
All right, noted. In any event, I do have the calendar up on the screen. We do request a motion just to make this official, and then we send it to the city clerk, and he can finalize it, put it in all the city calendars. It gets posted out on the bulletin board and also online. I run through these with the planning commission, and they have twice as many dates, but sometimes there's holidays and weird conflicts. I didn't notice anything on this one.
because it's a Tuesday.
Yeah, that helps.
I think that it's fine.
Okay. So we are looking for a motion.
Motion to approve the 2024 calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any special things from the city for us?
No, we are still going along with our zoning ordinance rewrite. Nick, I don't know if you're aware of that, but we are currently engaged with McKenna as our consultant They are helping us rewrite the zoning ordinance entirely. So we're also looking at doing things like consolidating zoning districts and creating a new zoning map for the city. We had several public engagement sessions throughout the summer on different topics. So we are in the phase now where we're looking through the drafts. We actually have our second draft. So planning staff is reviewing that and still continuing to fine tune that with the consultant. We are also working with the steering committee. So we do have the chair, Ian, who is not present tonight, is on the steering committee. So we will be continuing to develop this document and work towards approval in 2024.
Is the draft on the
Not right now. We don't have any drafts up publicly available. We are, I believe, once we get through this next round of drafting, whenever it gets to the point where we're all comfortable with releasing it to the steering committee, I think at that point it might become, relatively public. So we're just worried about getting drafts out there that are not fully set. But we'll continue to keep you all in the loop, and it'll be updated on Zone Ferndale at some point. So that's our website, zoneferndale.com.
So when you're ready for public comment, there'll be a draft on
Yes.
Zone Ferndale.
Anybody on the board have anything that they want to bring? Going to adjourn at 8:02.
Okay. Let me talk to IT to make sure we're off the recordings.
How long have you lived in